Chris Sale notched his record-setting 200 strikeout last night in Atlanta's 3-0 victory over the Colorado Rockies. Whit Merrifield dealt with a scary situation getting hit by a pitch in the helmet. We'll break down all of that and more on this episode of Braves Today. Yes, welcome on into Braves Today, your home for all of your news and coverage about the Atlanta Braves. I'm Lindsay Crosby. He's Christian Rauh. You can follow us on Twitter. I'm at Crosby Baseball. He's at Christian S. Rauh, R-A-U-H. You can also read all of our written work, bravestoday.com. That is the Braves Today Substack. Go check out everything that we do over there. And last night, in this 3-0 victory for the Atlanta Braves over the Colorado Rockies, Chris Sale, dominant. It's warranted to call this a dominant outing, right?
Yeah.
7 scoreless innings, no walks, and just 6 hits, struck out 9 batters. So didn't get to double digits, but this is his 4th start this year of 7 innings with no runs allowed. And this extends a streak. Now, Chris Sale has 15 consecutive starts with 2 or less runs allowed. This goes back to the beginning of June. But despite all of that's not the biggest story. That streak is not the biggest story of this outing because Chris Sale did this.
2-2. And there is strike 3, and there is strikeout number 200 this year for Chris Sale, the first lefty to record 200 Ks in a season in franchise history.
You heard Brandon Gaudin there. Chris Sale is the first left-handed pitcher in franchise history to have 200 strikeouts. And this is the longest continually operating franchise in Major League Baseball history. The previous record here was Tom Glavine, 192 punch-outs in 1991, was the first of his 2 Cy Young seasons. He went 20-11, 2.55 record that year, led all of MLB with 9 complete games. I have a great stat. Shout out to my good friend Grant McCauley of 92.9 The Game. He had a great stat last night. Glavine had 192. Warren Spahn in 1950 had 191 strikeouts. And Denny LeMaster in 1963 had 190. But the innings it took these guys to get those strikeouts. LeMaster got his 190 strikeouts in 237 innings. Warren Spahn got his 191 in 293 innings. Glavine's record of 192 was in 246 and 2/3 innings. Chris Sale has his 206 strikeouts in 160.2 innings. He's the only one to average more than 9 strikeouts per 9. Christian, I've got to ask here. We thought Chris Sale was going to be good this year. Was there any world where you expected this out of Chris Sale?
No, and I mean that like in the best way I possibly can, but
respectfully.
Yeah, you have to think that you weren't going to have this much of a resurgence after what we've seen from Chris Sale over the last couple seasons, injury plagued and all that good stuff. I will say it's nice to see that he's in the nice light of being in the Cy Young contention after all those injuries on the Red Sox, after what people think about of him cutting the jersey, being a part of the member of the White Sox. You're finally seeing what Chris Sale deserves to be seen as a Cy Young award-winning pitcher. And that's what he's set up to be. And you might see him as a Triple Crown winner. He's leading all the categories in the National League right now with strikeouts 206. He's got 16 wins, which I believe is 3 more than Zach Wheeler right now. Mm-hmm. And he's leading with a 2.46 ERA, which is not only the best in the National League, it's the best in baseball right now. I'm a little disappointed he didn't get 10 strikeouts because I predicted 10 and double digits for 2 of the 3 batters. So it's up to you, Charlie Morton, to step up today. So maybe that will happen. Who knows?
Help us out.
Those Rockies do sure strike out, though. We saw that last night. But I'm really excited to see what Chris Sale can do the rest of the way. I don't even know if he's going to make it to 200 innings, but he might make it to 240 strikeouts, which is quite impressive.
Absolutely wild. I went to look this up. I was just curious what the overall strikeout record in a season was, because we know Spencer Strider can throw out over 200 punchies. Obviously, we saw Sale do it this year. You just did the math a little bit. He might get to 240 this year. The all-time franchise record for a single season belongs to a Boston Bean Eater, because all of these stats do at this point. Charles Bluffington in 1884 struck out 417 batters. He went 48-16 in his 67 starts. 63 of those were complete games. Had a 2.15 ERA. He also batted like 260 that year as well, because you did both of them back then.
Did it say how many innings?
I don't have it off the top of my head, but it can't be less. I'm gonna guess it can't be less than 400, if not more. I feel like nobody back then really had giant like strikeout totals. So I'm gonna find that. Oh, got it. Here we go. 587 innings.
What?
Boston
In a season?
In one season, Boston used 2 starting pitchers and 5 total pitchers the entire year. Bluffington started 67 games. Jim Whitney started 37. And then they had 3 other guys combined for 12 starts. That was it. He threw
3 seasons of pitching now.
3 top innings count seasons to get that in 1 year. That's how much the game has changed. That's just absolutely
wow.
Okay, all right. So Chris Sale now. Back to Chris Sale. Shout out George Bluffington. Back to Chris Sale. 6.1 F WAR. Fangraphs WAR. Highest pitching WAR total since Fangraphs was invented. The next closest starter in the NL was Zach Wheeler. 4.4, right? So, yeah, Chris Sale's he had a top 6 finish in the Cy Young in the AL 7 consecutive years. He was runner-up in 17, 3rd place finish, 2 4th places, 2 5th places. This is the year. I don't really know is there anything Zach Wheeler can do short of 3 consecutive perfect games to catch Chris Sale?
Yeah, a no-hitter might, push him up into that category, but I think Chris Sale's got it in the bag. And especially since Dylan Cease's already got that no-hitter, he's a little bit behind. But no, I think Zach Wheeler's just going to be the runner-up. And that's not a bad year to be the runner-up, because Chris Sale's just absolutely just doing great things. And it's not just him. It's this entire rotation, Lindsay. We mentioned it before, but they extended again. The Braves starting pitching is now allowed 3 runs or fewer in 22 straight games. It extends their longest single-season record in Braves history. They're doing all of this with this rotation, with the legends of the game that we have seen the Braves have. The Glavins, the Maddox, Smoltz, you name them all, right? They're doing this year. And they're not even at full strength. They're doing it without Spencer Strider. So it is super impressive what this entire rotation is doing. Of course, led by Chris Sale and his NL Cy Young award-winning performance.
Yeah, this is dominant. Something that was a little bit prevalent in Braves Twitter last night, and I had something to do with this, so I want to address it, is Chris Sale's velocity was a little interesting last night. And we just going to spend a minute on this. He looked normal in the first inning. He hit 96 on his next to last fastball. But after that, his fastball dropped. He only threw 2 fastballs in the second inning that were harder than 92 miles an hour. And from that point through the 5th inning, or until the 5th inning, he only had 2 fastballs break 93. At one point, StatCast was showing he was almost 3 mile an hour down from his season average. And I felt like I needed to say something. Or not say something, but I made the observation that I noticed this trend during the game, because I was at the home opener in the press box when Spencer Strider was throwing low to mid 90s, and none of us really were comfortable saying anything. And it turned out that was the inning. That was the game where he left with the elbow pain, had the imaging, ended up having elbow surgery, and missed the rest of it. I tried to watch it during the game. His velo picked back up in the 5th inning. He didn't throw a ton of four-seam fastballs. It was a lot of sinker slider. But when he did throw those fastballs, the velocity was a little bit closer to normal. And was not at the game last night, did not have a chance to go in the press conference and talk to him about it. Nobody asked him about it. But it looked like he was deliberately backing off a little bit to try to dial in the control. The fastball was a little wild in that first inning, so I was a little concerned about what was going on. And it looks like he just backed off a little bit, got it figured out, and then went back to the heat then that last inning. And I think what's funny is he didn't even need the velocity to shut down Colorado. He finished the game with 23 whiffs and a 35% CSW and gave up a grand total of 1 extra base hit. And like these always seem to do in a Chris Sale start, It was a fly ball to Jorge Soler in right field that Jorge Soler did not make a play on. In this case, it was right there at the base of the wall. Soler tried to get it, and it went between him and the wall. And then the ball lodged in the fence between the chain link fence and the padding. Frustrated that they did not rule it a ground rule double or something. They let Ezequiel Tovar be at third base on there. But then Chris Sale obviously got 3 consecutive outs. There was 2 strikeouts and a fly out or a ground out. Didn't let Tovar score. Even then, he wasn't fazed by it. But even that one extra base hit, I'd argue wasn't really his fault. It just seems every time Chris Sale makes a start, there's a fly ball to Jorge Soler that goes a little bit wrong or just goes a little bit sideways in right field.
Yeah, this is going to be something we got to get used to, having Soler in the corner outfields again, and it's strap in because we're probably going to get a couple more of those across the rest of the season and next year as well. But you mentioned those whiffs, 23 whiffs. That was the most in all of baseball yesterday, all 13 games. It's just been really impressive to see what Chris Sale has done. And I was nervous about that velocity too when you sent it my way. We were talking offline yesterday, but he really let it go. He really let it go towards the end of that start. I think there was a couple times he threw 97. It was really impressive watching Chris Sale just change his command and control. He's got it all figured out this year. He's got everything just figured out. He has really mastered his craft this season.
I talked to him in spring training down at Northport, and he swore up and down in the press conference after the Braves signed him. He swore up and down when I talked to him in spring training. He was the healthiest he's ever been. And I think a lot of us as in Braves country, right? Fans, media, whatever, we took it with a grain of salt because we haven't seen, you alluded to earlier, we haven't seen Chris Sale be healthy really since 2018, 2019, right? He's thrown, I think, 150 innings in the last 3 seasons combined. And no, he's completely healthy. And he talked last night in the media availability after the game about having a healthy offseason for him was huge because it really let him work on building up his stamina, refining everything versus just trying to rehab to get back on a mound. And so that's why not only has he been able to pitch all season, he's been able to pitch at a Cy Young level. So definitely good to see there. Quick note, 13 games yesterday, not a full slate of games, but if you want to hear about what happened in these games, go check out our other podcast, First Pitch, wherever you get your podcast, and on YouTube. We'll put a link in the episode description and on YouTube right up here in the corner. But it comes out every single weekday morning. We break down all of the news from the previous day's worth of games, the storylines, the things to know. So go check that out.
I'll say one more thing about this before we move on about Sale. You mentioned that post-game conference. We are talking all these amazing things, what he's doing and how he's the front runner for the Cy Young and how he might win the pitching triple crown. He doesn't seem to care at all about that, Lindsay.
Yeah.
All he seems to care about is the Braves making the postseason. And you absolutely have to love that from a veteran guy that is just all in on getting these Braves back to where they belong. I think that is really exciting. That makes me just like the guy even more.
Yeah, one of the quotes he had was, teams are going to come at him, and they don't care how many strikeouts he had last game, right? They're going to give him their best. And so the goal there is to win, get the team in the postseason. You'd love to see that selfless spirit from I'm going to call one of the leaders of the team this year, especially having lost Spencer Strider. In just a second, let's talk about a scary situation happened late in the game with Whit Merrifield, some of the ramifications of that. We'll do that next, right here on Braves Today. Welcome back into Braves Today. Lindsay, Crosby, Christian, Rauh. And in this, it wasn't all just great stuff in the game. In the 7th inning, there was a scary situation involving second baseman Whit Merrifield.
Oh gosh. Oh, and it looks like, man, take your time, Whit. I think he just told him to get the ball over the plate is what he said to Criswell.
So it's frustrating. There's no two ways about it for Criswell.
So Merrifield takes a Jeff Criswell pitch in the back of the head. You can see from the video, he was hot, right? He was not happy about getting hit in the head, and he walked off the field under his own power. He went down to all fours and was quickly back up. The team's checking on him. Luke Williams came in, who to pinch run, promptly went first to third on a G. Urshela hit and run, and then sac fly from Michael Harris drove him in. So Atlanta got a run out of that whole sequence. But one medical update on Whit Merrifield. Snitker said after the game, He passed all the concussion tests that they gave him. They were going to reevaluate him today. Obviously, time of recording, we don't quite know the results of that yet, but they were going to reevaluate him today. And if he passes everything, and Whit Merrifield expressed to the coaching staff when he was being evaluated, he feels like he should be able to play today. Now, Merrifield himself talked to the media after the game. It was interesting. The medical update first, he said that he was going to get a CT scan just to be safe, and that likely he was probably not going to be able to play tonight. And that's just one of those precautionary things. That's, you assume, guy gets hit in the head, they're going to try to hold him out for a day or so just to be safe. He's also, though, on the MLBPA rules committee, and they have a regularly scheduled call this morning. And so he said, and I've got the quote here, it's going to be a long conversation on what we've got to do to make pitchers think about this. I just took 95 right off the head. I'm very lucky that it got me in a good spot. And on his note, it looked like it caught the edge of the helmet. So I don't quite think it was flush on his head. I think it caught the bottom edge of the helmet in the back. I've got to go get a CT scan. I'm out of the game. He gets to stay in the pitch. I'm probably not going to be able to play tomorrow. No repercussions on his part. And without being overly dramatic, that was my line. That was my life on the line right there. I'm sick of it. It's happening way too much. And he mentioned some other guys on other teams that we've seen get hurt like this. I watched Taylor Ward get hit in the face last year and have to get reconstructive surgery. That ended Taylor Ward's season.
That was bad.
And I was talking to a buddy of mine who covers the Angels. He said that Ward got hit on like the shoulder this year. And ever since then, he's been awful at the plate. And there's probably a lingering effect there of he expecting to get hit.
Yeah.
Justin Turner got hit in the face last year. It's happening at an exponential rate. Guys are getting hit in the hand. Mookie Betts broke a bone in his hand this year. It's just ridiculous. It has to be fixed, or God forbid, something terrible is going to happen. And to his point, we've seen Braves players this year get hurt and be out. Multiple. Travis d'Arnaud took one on the wrist and missed a week. Austin Riley took one on the wrist and is going to be out 6 to 8 weeks. Here's my question, I think. He's not wrong, right? Teams are calling these dudes up that throw 100 miles an hour. They don't know where it's going. They say, just set up down the middle, throw it as hard as you can. Hopefully we'll get a guy out. What can Major League Baseball legitimately do to try to rein this in? What options do you actually have in this situation?
You mentioned Arnaud and Riley. Michael Harris, the second, also got hit in the hand too, didn't he? That's another one.
That's right. Yeah, he did. And we thought he was going to miss a bunch of time. He ended up checking in on defense the next day. So that's right. I forgot about him. We thought he was going to miss more time than he did.
That's a bad thing that we're forgetting about the multiple amount of people that have been hit by this thing. I think the only thing that you can possibly do, because this is a tough one to fix, right? You can't really change the game. I think the only thing that you can change in this thing is when it comes to getting hit in the head. And I think that if you hit a batter in the head, that means your control is just nowhere where it needs to be. I think you can realistically eject a player automatically if you hit a player in the head. I think that is fair. If you hit somebody in the head, that means that you are nowhere near the strike zone, Lindsay. I think that is
so, like, above the shoulders, head, neck, sails over their head, whatever. If it's above the shoulders, you're out of the game.
Yeah, if it sails over the head, I think you maybe the umpire could use discretion and do a warning, maybe if that's the case. But if it causes contact with the head or neck area, I think that should be considered an automatic ejection. You can use the replay system if you want to. College sports uses that for targeting, but almost every sport uses something to protect head injuries, and I think that's the biggest thing. Merrifield made a really good point. That's his life on the line, and especially you can't really blame the guy for saying that. Do you want 94 miles an hour taken at your head? I sure don't.
Nope.
He had a welt on the back of his neck. It just missed his helmet, as you alluded to. I don't blame him for being upset or mad whatsoever. I would love to be a fly on the wall in that conference call because I'd love to hear what they got to say. But I think that's probably the only thing that you could possibly do. I don't know if that has anything to how you can fix, hitting the hands on the bat. Maybe that would change the way. But hit by pitches are not going away. And it's actually becoming an epidemic. Starting in 2021, in the last 10-year span, according to Fangraphs, 2,112 hit by pitches in the season. There's never been more than 2,000 before the year 2021. Since 2021, it has been over 2,000 every single year. It was 2022 is 2046, and 2023 it was right back to 2112. I did the math and looked at some pacing compared to 2024 last night after the Whit Merrifield. They are right on pace to surpass 2,000 hit by pitches yet again in 2024. It's also the passing of pitchers throwing in the upper zones is also increasing year by year, as well as velocity year by year. So it's I don't know if you're going to be able to fix the velocity portion of that, Lindsay, because they keep bringing out younger guys that throw hard. They want to get strikes. That's just the new end of the game. But you got to find out a way of working the up and in, and taking that away from players, or just making it some sort of punishment, as I mentioned, if they do hit somebody in that neck or head area.
I think it's worth asking, is there an avenue where a suspension, an automatic suspension based on a player missing time, is that worth it? Is that something teams would try to game? So, like, just off the top of my head, if a player misses, let's say every 5 games, a starter misses because they were hit by a pitch by you miss one start. And because I'm thinking about the head thing is scary. I think you're on the right track. If you come in above the head, above neck, head, whatever, above the shoulders, you should be ejected from the game. You should be gone because obviously you cannot control what you're doing. But a lot of the instances that he mentioned, or that we've mentioned, Mookie Betts, Austin Riley, Harris, Darno, those were all hand wrist. And a lot of those were the backhander wrist, right? Not even the front one. It's hard to like armor that up or protect that because you have to have flexibility, and it's the back one. So is it worth looking at some sort of conversation? I don't want to say fine guys, because a lot of these guys don't make a ton of money anyway. Don't fine guys. But is it worth a suspension that is correlated with the amount of time a guy misses? Let's say Merrifield misses 5 days. Criswell's suspended and can't make his next start. Is that fair? Do you think that's enough of a deterrent? Or is that something where you may see you open up the risk for shenanigans where a team may say, we had a backup in there who we don't really need, and Zach Wheeler hit him. We're going to hold him out for a week and say he can't play so that we can hurt the Phillies down the stretch.
Yeah, I think that could there's ways that they could find ways to work around those as teams. And that really only comes into play if you're a starter. If you're a reliever, then how does that work, right? Does it you
Right.
miss 5 appearances, you can't step in for 5 games? I think it's interesting. I don't know if they go down that route. I think that would be a very tough route to try and fight on both sides, because I think you're gonna have to get pitching to agree too on the players for the rules committee. They're gonna have to find some way to agree on that. I think it's gonna be really hard to try and change anything to do with the inside pitches that affect the hands. I think that's going to be the toughest thing. I think the first step will be eliminating and punishing or suspending, or however you want to call it, to the head and neck area. I think that's the
Bean
first
balls,
step.
yeah.
I think that's the first step on fixing this situation.
Yeah, and I do want to clarify, there is nobody at all who has intimated that any of these shots to the head were intentional. That is
No.
not a thing in the game. And Merrifield even talked about even just hitting the opposing guy is not something that's in the game anymore. You don't go out and retaliate and hit the other guy. That's not part of the game anymore. He did touch on the fact that pitchers don't have to hit. And so because you're encouraged not to go retaliate and hit one of their guys, and their pitcher's never going to come to bat, that there's less consequences for pitchers. I don't necessarily think it's more as much that as it is teams maybe prioritizing stuff over control. I do agree there's not an easy way really to handle this. I think you're spot on. You can institute something for the most egregious things, that the face, the stuff above the shoulders. And I did notice when Travis d'Arnaud finally returned a week later, he had it was like a slide-on sleeve he wore on his backhand, and it had like a rubber pad right over his wrist. I don't want to say the solution is just to armor these guys up. I do think there is some developments in flexible protection to take a little bit of the sting out of it. But I think it's got to be more, you can't be reactive on this. You got to be proactive. You have to find ways to eliminate this from the pitcher's perspective, not from minimizing the damage on the batter. That's like saying, hey, too many people are speeding and going and getting in accidents. We're not going to worry about the speeding. We're just going to try to make cars like buff them up and make them safer. It's great to make things safer. The solution is to fix the speeding. And it feels like that here. I just don't know how you do this. And I don't really know if there is a silver bullet. Like you said, I'd be really curious to hear how this conference call goes and to hear what comes out of this. Obviously, anything proposed by the Players Association has to be agreed to by MLB. Vice versa, anything MLB proposes, the Player Association has to agree to. We know those are notoriously hostile bodies. And I believe MLB has enough seats on the rules committee to unilaterally pass anything with a 1 year notice. They can unilaterally do something, but I imagine anything that they try to do right now that would punish a player for a ball above the head and neck, I feel like would probably be accepted by the Players Association.
I agree. No, I agree. I think we're going to see a new rule by the beginning of the season that does change this, whether it happens at winter meetings, whether it happens just sometime in the off season. But I do think when we head into spring training next year, that'll be part of the new rules.
Yep. All right, wrapping this up here. Tonight's matchup, 7:20 p.m. It is on Bally Sports South. 51-88 Rockies versus 75-63 Braves are still only half a game up on the Mets because the Mets just absolutely took it to the Boston Red Sox last night. Interesting pitching matchup for me here. 23-year-old Bradley Blaylock versus 40-year-old Charlie Morton. A 17-year spread in the starters. I think we're both on the consensus here. Atlanta feels like the absolute favorite on this. But you have a specific request of Charlie Morton tonight, don't you?
Yes, 10 strikeouts. Come on. You got to give me those 10 strikeouts, Charlie. You got to help me out with my prediction here because I can't be wrong. Just what, my second show back with you, Lindsay, over here on Braves Today? I can't be wrong because I'm never wrong. But no, this is interesting with Blaylock here. This is going to be his fifth start of his career, his sixth appearance. He had a one-inning stout with the Milwaukee Brewers before he went over to the Colorado Rockies. He's only got 21 and 2/3 innings in the major leagues. You compare that against Charlie Morton, who is qualifying for an AARP membership in the next month or so. So it's gonna be really fun watching these two go back and forth. 10 strikeouts, Charlie. Come on, do me in.
That's what we need from you, Charlie Morton. Also, probably a pretty good lock. He's gonna spin a curveball and hit a lefty on the back foot. That is not a retaliation for Whit Merrifield. I'm gonna go ahead and throw it out there now. Some dumb person on Twitter is gonna say that. We're saying now that's not gonna be the case. This has been Braves Today for Wednesday, September 4th. If you're listening on audio, do us a favor, leave us a 5-star review. If you're on YouTube, leave us a comment down below. If you have any questions for us, let us know. We'll grab those probably next off day, unless we just have a boring game and need something to talk about. But also, if you're on YouTube, do us a favor. Also, go out and subscribe to that audio feed. We want to believe that Braves country can show up for their teams and for their shows. Until next time, this is Braves Today.